Welcome to Second Take, the show that focuses on the issues behind the news. Business Leadership South Africa chairperson Bobby Godsell says accountability at Marikana is essential to avoid Sicilian-style revenge killings. Mining Weekly editor Martin Creamer tells us more. Welcome, Martin.
Thanks, Shannon.
Now, Bobby Godsell said that at a Marikana forum this week that the failing negotiations at the mine and in the mining industry in general have to be made to work. How can this be achieved?
He comes from a history of making things work. You know, the very serious strikes we had in the late 80s, he was right in the heart of that. And he realized that the only way to solve the problem in issue on violence is through negotiation. You've got to sit down and talk. And even at that early stage, the National Union of Mine Workers wasn't as organized as it was, and it didn't have that same membership. But they didn't get bogged down in bureaucracy and say, well, you have to have a threshold of 50% of the mine workers before we talk to you, otherwise we can't recognize you. No, they said, let's sit down and talk, because it was better to talk to someone than nobody. And this is the whole background that he's using for the Marikana situation, saying, make it inclusive. Bring AMCU in. Don't start saying you've got to have certain thresholds before we speak to you. Speak to them. If they want to be spoken to, don't be legalistic. And that should have happened, I mean, ages ago, because AMCU complained that, you know, they were always given high thresholds. They had the door closed on them so many times, and that is built up towards this terrible situation that we have in Marikana. So inclusivity, get the people in, get them talking. Otherwise, we know they start fighting.
Now, is it possible that mining houses could eventually lift wages over time?
Well, look, you can see now that there's so much confusion over this wage issue that, you know, the Chamber of Mines even called a meeting and said, where in heaven's name did they pluck out of the air that rock drill operators earn 4,000 Rand a month? And we can say categorically that rock drill operators in South Africa on the mines earn between 10,000 Rand a month and 12,500 Rand a month. And then Northern Platinum went further and said our rock drill operators earn 11,000 Rand a month. But, you know, if you look at the cost to company, it can be as high as 13,000 Rand a month. Now it seems that Impala Platinum is, you know, the demand is 12,500 Rand a month. And because the rock drill operators are already getting that, this magic 12,500 Rand a month now apparently has become 16,500 Rand a month. So, you know, there's so much confusion. And one point that Bobby Godsell made is that it's not the mining industry that's paying badly. In fact, you know, it's a labor intensity. It's the best labor intensive payer in South Africa, and it's on average it's a high payer. So it's an interesting starting point for wage fights, because I'm sure you'd find other areas where the wages are far worse.
And I suppose they want them to sort of enter at a general level and then be able to work up so that by the time they're at a senior level, they're earning more.
Well, you know, he was saying what South Africa needs is young people to come into the mining industry, start off, you know, doing a lashing job, and then move to be a rock drill operator, and then move to be a shift boss and a section leader, and become the CEO. You know, that's the sort of thing we're looking for in South Africa, where people, the talent moves to the top. Doesn't seem to be happening. I think that one of the failings of the industry is that they don't seem to have scope for minimally educated people to sort of rise up the ranks, which I think they're going to relook at.
Now, Chamber of Mines CEO Becky Sibiya says NEDLAC has become what he calls a waste of time. Can you tell us why he says this and what government needs to do to assist?
Well, I think that NEDLAC was roundly criticised. In fact, there were, you know, the scathing remarks about NEDLAC. This was supposed to be the body that brought together business, labour, government and the community, so that they didn't fight on the streets, you know, and that you'd get an early warning system. But apparently the government cold-shouldered this during you know, a period where we had a fairly conservative growth pattern, and they decided, look, they weren't going to attend NEDLAC. And since then, it seems that unmandated, low-level human resource people have had to do the job of attending these meetings. And because government DGs and people like that weren't attending, then the Chamber of Mines sort of started thinking, gee, this is a waste of time. And so as they were making the point, you can have a thing on paper that looks very good. This is supposed to be business sitting down with labour and government and the community, but it's absolutely worthless. And it was hanged, drawn and quartered during this debate. Everybody condemned NEDLAC. So it is a tremendously hypocritical sort of situation. You've got these institutions, and now I see that the auditor, after the forensic auditor audit, claims that there's like R1 million missing or something in NEDLAC. So it just shows you, we've got these sort of whited sepulchres up there. They're even consuming money and irregularly, and they're doing absolutely nothing to help the whole industry.
It's a bit of all talk and no action.
Yeah, we're not practicing what we preach. I think that's what they actually mentioned during this debate as well, that we've got sort of formal values that look like they're being practiced, but informally people are saying, oh, this is useless, and they're not telling the world about it. Nobody's communicating. And you get the shock when you have a Marikana.
Martin, how can South African mines return to growth?
Well, Bobby Godsell is on that National Planning Commission, and they've worked out that we've got to get our economy growing above 5% in order to take in the jobs. And he's saying, this platinum industry, the coal mining industry, it's got the capability to grow at 6% a year, if we put the proper infrastructure, and our mine should be set on that. So he's sort of saying, calling all patriots, come forward now. We want corporate patriots. We want people in business patriots to start fixating on how we can make this country a success and say, hell no, we're not going to have this disastrous consequence. We're going to do something much better. And I thought it was quite a good call to people in South Africa, to make sure that they focus their minds now around doing what's right for this country. And it's got so much potential, and not letting Marikana stop it in its tracks. And of course, a lot of people have died at Marikana, and one of the strongest points Bobby Godsell made was, look, there have been murders. Those perpetrators must be held accountable. We can't have a situation where 10 people have been murdered and they're murdering security guards, trade unionists, and policemen. And nothing seems to be done about it. Then 2 days later, it appears almost as if the police took revenge. And what we saw on TV was only the tip of the iceberg. They then engaged in hot pursuit, and people who were trying to run away, they pursued them and actually caught them. And instead of apprehending them or letting them run away even, they proceeded, it seems, to execute them. And so there was an element of revenge, and he was saying, this is what can happen. You can have a Sicilian type revenge pattern developing. That's why these people must be held accountable. They must be charged. They must be brought before the courts. They must be punished if they're murderers. They can't just be allowed to walk around. Otherwise, we're going to have reprisals. So that's a very important step that has to be taken. And you can't just say, well, I've got a judicial commission of inquiry. Now we've got to wait for that. The normal procedure of charging these people and making sure that they go before the court should have taken place. We should have heard, this fellow's been charged with the murder of a policeman. Here he is. We take him through the courts and see what happens. But nothing like that is really crystallizing, which is quite concerning.
And I also read that less than half, but close to 50% of the people who were arrested out of those 270 are not actually employees of the mine.
That's right. So that was the point made by Becky Sabia of the Chamber of Mines, saying, look, you think this is a mining issue, but it's not just an industrial relations issue. It's a socio-economic issue where people around these mines are unemployed, so they join in. And, such a huge number of them that were arrested and charged, they weren't even employees of Lonmin. And that's proof of what he's saying.
Well, I suppose we'll just have to wait and see, and we hope that people's sanity will prevail.
Yeah, I think it will. We've got some very good people. I mean, Bobby Godsell was very impressive at this meeting, and the panel was very good. And that's just, a spontaneous reaction by the Graduate Institute of Business Science to try and do that. get people together, discuss this, and it does help. It helps a lot. I see there are more coming up of this sort of nature, and I think by the time that judicial commission does come about, there's going to be a lot of stern reprimands coming through, and hopefully, the perpetrators will be brought to book.
And hopefully government will be involved in these also.
They will be. They have to be. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Martin.
It's a great pleasure.
That's the show for today. Join us again next time for more news and insight into what's happening in the mining world.